Women of Reddit, what is the silliest thing you cried about when pregnant? Story 1, nothing. I am 8.5 months, and at around month 4, I woke up one morning for work and sat in the bathroom for 10 minutes just sobbing. Nothing going on at all. Literally still in PJs. I couldn't do my makeup till it passed LOL. I was fully aware of how ridiculous it was, but couldn't stop. Only time that has happened the whole pregnancy. Story 2. Dude, I was toward the end of my last trimester and I got pulled over because I took a turn to harshly or something. I don't remember. The moment the cop walked to my window, I immediately burst out crying. I was waving my arms trying to cool myself down, shouting, "I just wanted to go get my husband from boot camp." And this poor young officer backed up with his hands in the air and tried to very calmly say, "It's okay. I'm going to let you go." But because I was crying and hysterical, I could not hear him, and I just got worse and worse until another officer showed up. I think he just happened to be passing by when this was happening, and she came to my window and was like, "It's okay. He's not going to even give you a citation of any kind. Just be on your way. Just breathe." Lamau. Story 3. I ugly cried while reading a bedtime book to my toddler. The book that made me cry with snot and hyperventilating sobs was The Little Engine That Could. It prompted my toddler to take the book out of my hands and pat me on the back, saying, "It o'day, mommy, it o'day." Story 4. I accidentally bought battery-powered salt and pepper grinders, which I cried about in the first place. But then I had no batteries, and we were on a curfew because of lockdown, so I couldn't go back out and just buy batteries, so I cried even more. Also, technically not when I was pregnant, but less than 24 hours after my baby was born, I sobbed into my breakfast cereal because I couldn't feel my baby kicking anymore, and I was sad that I wasn't pregnant. Even though I wasn't sad, I was pretty happy about it, actually. Story 5. We won a contest at work, and were treated to lunch by a rep. As a group, we picked a somewhat more upscale place, and we all picked an entree. It was a place I'd been to a few times before, and couldn't wait for their veal piccata. All week I was talking about this chicken piccata to my coworkers, to my husband, and to literally anyone who would listen. I was so excited. On the day of the lunch, we placed our order, and the rep went to pick it up and bring it to our branch. She unpacked all of the meals and wrote our names on them. Typically, I would have had the first lunch, but I was busy with a customer and ended up with the last lunch. The rep thought that veal looked like hamburger. It absolutely does not, and mislabeled my meal. When it came time for me to eat lunch, I excitedly went to get my veal piccata, only to find there was one meal left, and it definitely wasn't mine. The veal had been swapped with the vegetarian meal, which had Brussels sprouts, mushrooms, and bell peppers. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have cared, but 1. I had been craving lemon and all things tart, and 2. Those specific vegetables had been triggering my morning sickness since day 1. Worse still, the coworker who had been given my meal took 2 bites, realized it was meat, and threw it out. I cried so hard my manager went back to the restaurant and bought a second veal piccata with her own money. Story 6. My husband toasting an everything-flavored bagel while I was sleeping. I had forbidden him from making those, but he, sincerely, thought since I was already asleep it would be okay. The smell woke me and I instantly threw up. I had been struggling with insomnia and was exhausted from the constant puking. I was so mad at him I sobbed/yelled for half an hour. Story 7. I craved oranges with our oldest, but I didn't like peeling them because it made my hands feel weird/dry. I opened the fridge one day and there were a bunch of peeled oranges in there. My husband stayed up the night before peeling them, and when I saw them I cried because it was so sweet, but also because I knew it wasn't enough to last me all day while he was at work. Story 8. I have a good one. I was very pregnant, living far from home. My mom sent me a box of my favorite C's candy. She special ordered my favorite type, so it was a whole box of one type. I lived in an area where you can't get them outside of Christmas. I'm trying to be good, so I only eat 1 or 2 a day. I will also note, my husband is a candy fiend, and I will hide my candy because he will eat all of it in one sitting. Well, one day I go to eat my candy and the box is gone. I'm really hormonal and craving this stupid candy. I look in the pantry and it's nowhere to be found. I start yelling at my husband and accuse him of eating my candy. He tells me he hasn't, and I decided he was lying and start to ugly cry because he doesn't care about me and ate my precious. I had a whole freak out, and he is just in disbelief, which I took as snark. I'm mad all day and night, like couldn't be in the same room mad. The next day I go to grab a big pot to cook myself something, and what do you know? There's my box of candy. I have no recollection of hiding it with the cookware. Yes, I had to go apologize to him for being so awful, but not before I treated myself to 2 candies. Story 9. I really wanted a frozen pizza during my first pregnancy. I was 14 pounds under my starting weight and couldn't keep anything down. I was in the tub one night when my husband offered to make me one. He had a particularly long day at work, so it was kind of him to offer. As I was sitting there, I realized that he would probably cut it into squares like I normally do. Only the idea of pizza in the shape of a square made me really nauseated. A triangle slice sounded fine, though. I didn't want to seem nitpicky since he was already doing me a favor. He brought it to me in triangles. I cried because I was so grateful that he cut a dang pizza into normal slices instead of squares. Story 10. I cried because I felt like I was a failure for eating enchiladas instead of feeding my baby something healthier. Lol. On a second note, I once cried happy tears because the mole, Mexican food, not the animal I was eating, was really good, and I was moved that the chef had put so much heart into the food he was serving. So I guess I just have big feelings about Mexican food when I'm hormonal. Story 11. My husband suggested going out to breakfast, but I didn't want to shower, so I was trying to find a hat. We had just done tons of laundry, so I was sitting on the floor, sobbing while digging through all this laundry, thinking somehow my hat got mixed in. My husband was like, "Hey, maybe we should get a pregnancy test?" I snapped that I was just sad I couldn't find my hat anyways. The sad hat baby is 23, and my husband knows me better than I know myself. Story 12. I went to Subway and said no to having it toasted. It was one of the chicken sandwiches. She put the meat on cold. I told her, wait, I still want the meat to be heated up. So she takes the sandwich and puts the whole thing in the microwave. I stepped away from the counter and started bawling. My husband came to ask what was wrong, and I sobbed about microwaved bread. Story 13. My Uber got stuck in traffic. It was like the 10th time that day I had cried. I had just flown home from a work trip, and my ankles were so swollen, and I was so tired. I just desperately wanted to be home, and then we just hit a wall of traffic. So I cried about that, my poor Uber driver, and then became absolutely inconsolable when I saw the wreck that caused the slowdown. I couldn't breathe. I was crying so hard. I really felt for that Uber driver. Poor guy just kept handing me tissues and telling me he was going to get me home safe. Story 14. I was hanging out with one of my friends from college a few years ago and was telling him a funny story about my cousin and I. Now the reason this story is funny has to do with the fact that I'm super white and my cousin is very Japanese. Anyway, as I'm wrapping the story up, I hear a weird noise from behind me. His 5-month pregnant wife had been asleep on the chair but evidently had been awakened by the story. My friend asks his wife what's wrong and she bursts out in tears. "It's just so beautiful how you and your cousin look so different, but he's just family to you. That's just so great. What an experience for you as children." She was just completely enchanted with my mixed-race upbringing. It was really sweet, if not a bit surreal in the moment. Story 15. My loving husband washed my favorite pajama pants. I got home before him and realized he's done laundry before work. I pulled out every pair of pants in my drawer looking for something as comfortable but couldn't find any. My husband came home to me sitting on the floor surrounded by all my pants, absolutely bawling. The pants were in the dryer and were done. He got them for me and apologized over and over. Story 16. Not while I was pregnant, but right after we got home from the hospital, my little Chihuahua, who has been my baby before I ever had a human baby, seemed sad and was shivering, and I had to have my husband hold our human baby so I could love on him and let him know he will always be my baby too. I was bawling my eyes out. Poor guy. I still feel bad because I can't hold him as much as before, and he used to be so spoiled in that way. Story 17. The movie Dumbo. Particularly the scene when the mom is stuck in the cage and is reaching through the bars to rock her baby and sing him a lullaby. The best part is I didn't even watch it. I just randomly remembered the scene and started sobbing and cried every single time I thought about it the entire pregnancy. Story 18. I accidentally stole an 8 ounces bag of shredded cheese from the store. I was probably 8 months pregnant and had my toddler in the front part of the cart. When I went to put him in the car seat, I realized that he had been sitting on the bag of cheese. I knew I should have gone in and paid for it, but I was too tired to get him out of his car seat, go into the store, wait in line, explain my theft, walk back to the car, and rebuckle him into his car seat. Logically, I knew that it wasn't a big deal, but I was so tired that I couldn't control my emotions. Part of me was hoping that I'd get arrested and get a break for a few days while I was in jail for my role as the Cheddar Bandit. That baby is now 18 years old, so my fugitive status is now a part of my identity. Story 19. My wife, bless her heart, made me a sandwich before I got home from work, and the cat ended up eating it. When I walked in, she was sitting at the kitchen table, head down in her hands, sobbing. I quickly asked what happened and wrapped my arm around her. She looked up with those big shiny pearls and said, "My mama made you a sandwich and the stupid cat ate it." I didn't let her see that I cheesed from ear to ear. It was so cute to me, and of course I let her know it wasn't the end of the world. Story 21. Of the weirdest side effects of my pregnancy was incredibly vivid dreams. One night, I had one in which one of my coworkers fell off the roof and died. Highly improbable. We're teachers, so no roof climbing. But I still woke up sobbing. I couldn't stop crying even after I woke up my husband and had him rationally tell me my coworker was fine. I even cried again later when I saw that coworker, so much so that I had to explain to him my dream. Story 21. I've never been pregnant, but I broke down sobbing while on my period because my husband had eaten the last of the Ben & Jerry's Netflix and chilled ice cream. We rarely eat dessert. Like a pint of ice cream will last us a week or two easily. But I had been looking forward to that little bit of ice cream all day. It had been a rough day of cramps and bloating and backache. I get home from work, get into my PJs, eat dinner, clean up and get all comfy on the couch with my heating pad, and ask my husband to bring me the ice cream. And he looks at me, guilt all over his face. "What ice cream?" I looked at him, half crazed, already starting to cry a little. "The Netflix and chilled? The one in the freezer?" And he goes, "Yeah, I ate it today, I'm sorry." Instant sobbing. He was so flustered he scrambled out an apology and literally ran to the car and got me like 2 different kinds of ice cream. He now asks, before eating the last of the ice cream when I'm on my period. I can only imagine how much worse it is while pregnant. Story 22. I bought ingredients to make a friend some cookies. I ended up being nauseous that day, so I told myself I would wait and make them the next day when I was feeling better. My sweet husband went ahead and started making them, thinking he would make life easier for me. I woke up to come downstairs and saw him making them. I immediately started just weeping and couldn't stop for hours after. "Those were my special cookies to make, not yours." Looking back, he was just trying to help, and I went way overboard. Story 23. There was a nature documentary in which a giraffe gave birth to a calf who wasn't healthy. She couldn't get him up off the ground no matter how much she licked and touched him. The herd had to move on, and she had to abandon the baby in the end, with the two of them calling to one another as the hyenas gathered on the other side. I called my husband sobbing so badly that he couldn't understand what I was saying, and thought it was a real emergency, until I finally explained it was about giraffes. Story 24. I sobbed uncontrollably because there was a fox that crossed the road. My husband said, "Aw, it's a baby fox." I started crying because what if the fox doesn't have a family? It's too little to be on its own. It's just a baby. Also cried because my salad was too small. I've ordered that exact salad many times before. I know its size. This didn't happen while pregnant, but 2 weeks postpartum when my hormones were still going crazy. A few days after I gave birth, I was filing for custody of my little brother. I raised him for the majority of his life. He's only 7 years younger than me, but we were left alone sometimes for weeks at a time, so I had to step up despite being completely clueless on what I was doing. He's always viewed me as more of his mother than his sister. Anyhow, the first time I seen him after the whole abandonment thing, he full-on picked me up to hug me, like ran to me and practically crushed me while lifting me off the ground crying. It reminded me of when he was little, and would come running crying, wanting a hug when scared or hurt. I busted out crying 'cause you're not my little baby anymore. You were supposed to stay little, go back to being small. He's over a foot taller than me, and it struck a nerve for some reason. He had a major growth spurt since the last time I seen him. He absolutely loves it. He thinks it's hilarious and purposely wears boots to add an extra few inches just to rub it in more. It's so stupid that I cried over my nearly adult brother not being the size of a 5-year-old anymore. I was just overwhelmed between just giving birth, having a newborn, and gaining a teenager in the span of a few weeks. Story 25. We had a really small bathtub, and I really wanted a bath because my hips hurt. So I had a lovely long bath, and when it was time to get out, I decided it would be easier to get out if I emptied the bath first. I got stuck. I couldn't figure out a way to haul my fat, pregnant butt out of the tub. My husband came in to try and help, and he started giggling, which set me off into giant, ugly sobs. I told him to fuck off, and I sat there sobbing for like 20 minutes. Poor bloke came back and helped me, and I eventually apologized. I can laugh about it now. Story 26. I ordered nachos for my husband to pick up from work. They didn't have DoorDash years ago. He gets home late, probably the last order to go. I build them on a big plate with toppings from home. Black beans, pico, avocado, etc. Heat them up to scalding. I had fresh chips on the side for crunch too. I turn around to walk my big self to the couch. I fumble, dropped the entire plate of nachos in the floor. Not could be salvaged. Wept like no tomorrow. I went in person the next day, but my heart broke over those nachos. Story 27. Cereal and the smell of fried bologna. My first pregnancy, my partner would fry it to a fucking crisp, and it smelled up the whole house, and I would get sick every time. My second pregnancy, my partner's children from another marriage ate all my Fruit Pebbles, and I immediately, frustrated because I had just purchased that specific cereal 2 days before and was craving it, just to find an empty box. Story 28. I wasn't pregnant, but when I was on hormonal birth control, I sobbed openly at the grocery store when they didn't have the brand of milk I wanted. Plenty of other, perfectly good milks were available and within reach, but the cream tops in the glass bottle were sold out. I crumpled. I'm adding this because the BC I was on tricked my body into thinking that I was pregnant, so while I was not, the effect was the same. Tears, constantly.